everybody! Happy Wednesday! We're starting a new week of streaming. Hopefully, week where Allison will actually complete every stream that is scheduled. It's good to have goals, right? So, welcome to, we have done this tutorial before, but it was specifically requested by our very favoritist, Crafty Skull Corvus, that I do a knotting tutorial. So I decided to do the professional knotting with bullion finish, because that is actually my preferred way to knot. And I just realized that I forgot a very important tool, so I'm going to have to pop out for just a second and grab that. So, professional knotting with bullion finish. So this is hand tying. You can do this with pearls, you can do this with any beads you want. The amethyst beads that I'm wearing are knotted using this method, and they even have a bullion finish. Look at that. I came prepared. So my amethysts are, why are you so dark, amethysts, and why aren't you in focus? So they've got a little knot in between each bead, and what this does is it separates your bead. There you go, now you can see it separates your beads and gives them a really nice drape. They hang really well. I love these so much, Corvus. They are for sale. They're expensive, but they for sale. Also, a cool thing about knotting is that if you want to extend your necklace, and since I've pretty much accepted now that I am the pandemic expansion pack version of my previous self, you know, 16 inches ain't gonna cut it anymore, because it's like right there, and it's really not comfortable. So if you got a 16-inch strand and you want to extend it, knotting's a really good way to do that, because this was a 16-inch strand, but since there are so many knots because the beads are so thin, I've got, I still haven't put my ruler back, but I've got a solid like 20-inch necklace here, which is great for layering. So today I'm going to be working with these cool Roman glass beads, which I am completely in love because they're so pretty. Yay! But yeah, so pros and cons of knotting real quickly before I go grab a needle and then start with the actual project. So pros of knotting, the things that I just said. It makes it blah blah blah. Let's try that again. It makes your piece lay really nicely. It gives it a very lovely kind of drapiness that you don't get from stringing on cable. It can extend the length of your beads. So if you don't have quite enough beads to make the length that you want, putting a knot in between each one can give you a way to extend that without having, oh, thank you. Without, Heather brought me needles because she's the bestest, Heather. I know, but I don't think they mind if I pop off and come back on. So anyway, also it gives a really nice, the header is back. Yes, she is. And she's going to be on camera for the button list tonight. We are going to have a chat and work because we both have massive amounts of things that we need to do. So that's why it's an Ask Me Anything tonight. So start thinking of your questions for us this evening on the button list. But for now, we're going to go ahead and, okay, so pros of knotting. It extends your length, it highlights your beads, it has a beautiful drape, and the last thing is that if your piece should break, you only lose one bead because all the rest are secured with knots. Now, cons of knotting. It takes typically twice as long or more than stringing. If your piece breaks, there's no way to just repair it. You have to reknot the entire thing. And if you're going to reknot the entire thing, I feel like my camera's not actually looking at me. If you have to reknot the entire thing, you have to clip each knot on the piece that broke and restring them and then reknot them. So that, you know, those are the cons. Is in all of its iterations, in all of, oh yay, Kenneth is thinking. Kenneth always asks really good questions. So in all its iterations, knotting is going to take longer than just straight stringing, whether it's, you know, making for the first time, repairing, whatever. So you just have to kind of have that in your mind. So let's talk tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. So I'm gonna need a needle, and since I'm doing Professional style knotting, most professional knotters do not use the retail ready Griffin silk cords. I will use them on occasion if there's a conglomeration of circumstances, like this is the right color or I can't find the right size in the right color in my spool cord. This has especially become a thing because a lot of companies really during the pandemic, they dialed back their production of the spool cord, so it's getting hard to find some of the colors. So I will use the Griffin silk on occasion, but typically most professional knotters will use cord on a spool. They will use either heat treated nylon, which is what this is, or they will use silk on a spool. The reason for that is it is vastly more cost effective. So if you're selling your knotting services, you want to have the hi sunshines, yay. Yeah, if you're selling your knotting services and you're including materials with what you're selling, you want the highest margin possible on materials. So buying it on a spool, if you're doing this a lot, is totally worth it. If you're not doing this a lot, you're going to be investing a massive amount of money in cord that you are rarely going to use. That's where those little retail ready cards of Griffin silk come in really handy, because most people who not just as part of their own personal jewelry production do not go through 100 yards of cord in like 2 months or less like we do. So, it's just a balancing act. But anyway, so you're going to need cord on a spool. Green. Green.
Ah, yes.
Not white, not black. So, if you're using cord on a spool, you need a needle. And we're going to be using a twisted wire needle tonight. So these, oh, Florida. Okay, so these are twisted wire needles. Medium is my favorite size. Sometimes you need, oh, we have some of the magnetic hematite still, right? Are you typing that right now?
I am not on stream yet.
Okay. Sunshine is regretting not buying them.
Gotcha.
Okay, so Heather believes that we have some more. So she's checking if she doesn't get back to you. I can always, I know how to close the box. But yeah, so I think we still have some for you. Okay, so anyway, twisted wire needle, and this is a medium, right? So there are fine needles and heavy needles, and there are definitely situations where you need those different sizes of needles, but medium is going to be your best bet. Like if you're like, I'm going to buy 1 package of needles, I'm not buying 4 packages of needles, medium's going to be your best bet. Also in medium, we have our bullion. So let's talk about bullion for a second. Bullion, also called French wire, it's actually a crossover material. It is also used in the embroidery industry. And pro tip, yay! Sunshine says thank you, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 4 strands left, and they were $5 a strand.
Still are, in fact.
Yes, they still are, in fact. Heather is not wrong, so just let us know how many you want. So bullion is, like I said, it's a crossover material from the embroidery industry, but, oh yeah, and pro tip, if you look for embroidery bullion, like bullion that is marketed from shops that cater to people who do needlework, you're going to get a massively better price on it than shops that cater to beaders, because in one beading project, we have 4. In one beading project, you're going to use about 1 inch of bullion. In an embroidery project, yay, hi Teddy Fit. In an embroidery project, you're going to use yards and yards of bullion. So the shops that cater to the people who do needlework have a better price because they're selling in bulk. Sometimes this means that you're getting 30 strands of bullion, which once again is a lot, just like your spool of cord. But you're going to get a bigger selection of colors also if you go to the embroidery world, because believe it or not, gold bullion, there's silver is pretty consistent across the board. There's like antique silver, shiny silver, and gunmetal. But gold, there are so many different golds. Like, and let me tell you, when you find that like holy grail perfect gold that doesn't look horribly white and doesn't look horribly yellow, you're like, yes, give me all for me. Or maybe that's just me. But, nope, sorry.
Man.
Someone can clip it if you want to see it again. So this is medium-sized bullion. It comes in several different sizes, and I will say if you are going for the embroidery world, you do kind of want to measure your bullion. So this is medium, which according to my caliper, and you got to be careful because this stuff is very delicate. So this is about, no it is not. Yes, so the medium size is about 0.1 millimeters. The fine size is smaller, and then the heavy size is bigger. And there is actually extra heavy, which is even bigger than that as well. So just a little demo of bullion because it looks like a slinky. You may or may not be able to see that on the camera, but it looks like a teeny little shiny slinky of wire, and everyone's like, ooh, it's a slinky, and they grab it and they're like, ooh, womp womp. Now this piece of bullion is not useful for anything anymore. So treat it VV gently because it is extremely fragile. In addition to your bullion, your needle, your cord, your beads, you are going to need the knotting tool of your choice. In my case, that's going to be a tweezers. Also, you really are going to need to get the hair out of your eye, which is going to be more got it. And then you are going to need your hypo cement for finishing. So when you are doing knotting projects, it is a wise choice to have 3 times the finished length of the piece in cord. And then when we're dealing with spool cord, we're going to be folding that cord over and working with it double. So that means you need 6 times your finished length. So this is probably going to be about 18 to 20 inches finished. So that means I need 60 inches times 2, 120 inches. So 10 feet of my knotting cord. Believe you me, and Heather will back me up on this one, as will everyone on my staff. We, I know, right? Hair out of the face, but it was like in my eye. Even worse. Trust me, cord is not expensive. It is horrible to run out of cord. Like, thread chicken is just as scary as yarn chicken, for anybody who knows what those two terms mean. But like, it's awful to run out at the end of your project, especially if you're doing something like I am, where it's a graduated strand. So I can't just, like, if I run out of cord at the end, I can't just, you know, just stop, because then all of a sudden it'll be like that, which is going to be very weird and wonky. And I will say, do I want this like really bright one in the middle, or do we want it off? I think I'm just going to go with the way the strand is strung. Usually that's the best choice. Okay, so 10 feet of cord. I'm going to go ahead and start by measuring that out. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so snip off. Once again, this may be overkill, but it's better to have too much than not enough. Then I am going to grab that and take my needle. So your needle has a collapsible eye. So you're just going to thread your cord through the eye of the needle, and then bring the ends together, like so. So that you've got the needle in the middle of your cord, and this is a long piece of cord. So, you know, it takes some getting used to. This is one reason why I don't teach knotting this way to beginners, because there's a lot of moving parts here. So you want to just make sure your needle is centered on your doubled cord, and then you're just going to take the end of your cord and you're going to tie an overhand knot. So this is not a complicated knot. This is just the knot that you would tie anytime you're tying a knot in a piece of string, and it's not even going to be part of your final project. It's just to keep your beads from falling off whilst you're doing the finish. I forgot a clasp. See, it is my thing because I forget things all the time, Heather. That's why it's my thing.
Okay, but again,
All right, can I?
what you need?
I need some kind of gold clasp, gold filter for me. Preferably something I can use with an extender chain. So how is everybody? How was your weekend? Don't forget that we do have Heather and I doing an Ask Us Anything on the button list. That is our little podcast that I still haven't released as a podcast yet because things and reasons, but that's going to be a podcasty stream at 7:30 p.m. on twitch.tv/Beading Dream, and also whatever channel you happen to be watching this on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I even have one of those at home that I can replace that with. Good call.
Sweet.
Because I'm nodding my Roman glasses.
Yay.
Uh,
Don't worry, I'm inviting everyone today.
Good. Well, how long do you think it's gonna take me to knot 18 inches, woman?
I'm kidding.
I was giving me shit, y'all. Okay, so now I'm going to cut myself 2 pieces of bullion. I always like to cut them at the same time because that way it's easier for me to get them the same length. So you need a nice sharp scissors for this, or a sharp wire cutter, but just whatever it is, it has to be sharp, because otherwise it's just going to smoosh the bullion, and that's no bueno. So we're just going to cut. And okay, so the easy amount to use per piece is 1/2 inch. I am a bit of a nitpicker, and I actually prefer 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch for most projects. That is one of those things that most people who are not me will never notice. So 1/2 inch is a good rule of thumb, but you can use 3/8 of an inch if you're crazy like me. Also, it is going to depend a bit depend a bit on how thick the ring is. Like this one's pretty normal size, but sometimes clasps have really, thick rings there, and so you need to make sure obviously that you can get enough bullion to get around that ring. All right, so I'm going to cut the end of my strand. So once again, graduated strand, which means that order of the beads is important. Okay, so everyone take a breath because it's about to get a little confusing for just a few minutes. I'm going to trim my end so I can get my beads off. Now I've got, and I know it's out of focus, but I know you can still see because you're all real intelligent like that. Okay, so I've got these 2 beads that are the end 2 beads on my strand. I'm going to take them both off my strand, and I'm going to string the second to last bead first and then the last bead onto my needle. Just going to take my needle and thread my second to last bead and then thread my last bead. Now I'm lucky because these beads are actually the same size, sort of. They're really not, and they're actually, they're in reverse order. That's not my fault, that was the strand. Okay, so again, revised version. Second to last bead, and then last bead. So the logic here is whichever bead you string on second is the one that's going to wind up being closest to your clasp. So I'm just going to put those on my needle. Now sometimes when you're doing this, you've got to pull a little hard for your first couple beads because you've got to compress the eye of the needle. And then I will tell you with your bullion, you're going to need to compress it a little more. So one way to do that is just gently kind of pull on it a bit. So I'm going to pull those babies all the way down to the end of my cord. like so. And then I'm going to string my bullion on. So yes, I did just lick my finger. No, don't judge me for it, because I can't contaminate you through the internets. All right, so I'm going to take my bullion and I'm going to carefully thread my needle through it. And then what I want to do is, this is kind of the hardest place, so I just want to grab it and I want to gently ease it down over that intersection. I think I need to compress that a little bit. The magnet round strands are $5 each, Sunshine, so $15 for 3. And I'm just going to use my tweezers to compress that eye a little bit more because I'm having trouble getting my bullion over it. Come on, am I going to have to go to heavy? I shouldn't have to go to heavy for this size, but goodness, it's being annoying. Alright, so I can't get it over the eye of my needle, so I'm just going to try this other piece. I might have to change sizes. Sometimes the pieces themselves are just, yeah, see, that one went. So sometimes you just get a piece that's obstinate. Maybe you didn't get it cut right. So this piece is toast, and I will cut another piece when it's time for me to finish. Yes, of course. Absolutely. Okay, so now we're gonna, that was for Sunshine. We will absolutely set those magnetic hematite strands aside for you. All right. So sometimes this happens. See this nonsense? That's because you're not always, when things are, you know, sliding down your threads, they're not always doing it at the same rate. So we just want to gently grab and pull until we get that even, and then continue to carefully slide our bullion down. We want to leave about 3 inches, 4 inches of space between your beads and your knot, and that's just because you're gonna have to tie some knots in a minute, and the more cord you have that to do that with, the easier it's gonna be for you. So all right, so we're gonna grab now our clasp. I'm going to string that onto our needle, bring it all the way down, and then we're going to skip the bullion and we're going to go back down through the bead that's closest to the bullion, which was the last bead on our strand. We're going to go down towards the other bead in the knot. Pull it all the way through. Make sure you even everything out. So you're always going to have your best luck when your 2 cords are even like this. So then we're just going to keep pulling. What's going to happen is that bullion is going to tighten down and it's going to make a little loop. We want to just pull a little bit more so that bullion kind of crunches up. And then we're going to take the short string and we're going to tie it and the long string together. You can do once or twice. Once looks neater, twice is more secure. I'm going to go with once. And then we're going to do the same thing with the next bead. I'm going to thread my needle down through that bead and pull everything through. Sometimes your cord will start to twist up like this. That's going to make everything harder for you, so you want to kind of, if you see that happening, try and pull it out, and keeping a hold of it is going to help as well so that it doesn't just twist into a knot, because I definitely have had to restart necklaces because of that problem. And then we're just going to bring that all the way up. There we go. And then once again, take the short cord, tie it, tie the short end and long end together, and here we go. So now what we're gonna do is string all of the beads. Literally pick up each bead from the strand and string them onto my needle and onto my cord. You don't have to worry too much about pulling them all the way down to the end at this point because we're going to do that when we're knotting. So I'm going to go ahead and string on all of my beads. Luckily these beads are not super tiny, so it shouldn't take me a million years to string. Okay, so also while I'm stringing, I am leaving for Denver next week for my fall shopping trip. So if you have anything that you want on our Discord, and you can get the invite link to our Discord if you're not on it already by typing !Discord into the Twitch chat. And there is a channel on our Discord called Shopping Requests. If there's anything specific you want me to look for, go ahead and post a comment on that channel and I will check that. When I'm in Denver, I will say that, so I leave on Wednesday. I'm going to be shopping Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The money's going to be gone by midday Saturday. So if you have a request, post it earlier rather than later. Thank you, Sunshine. I like it too. I like seeing how different people do things, how different people do the same things. I find it very interesting. This is, like I said, this is a bit of a sticky wicket sometimes for beginners, but if you're doing this in quantity and if time is important, this really is a very efficient way to do it. So yeah, if you've got anything that you want from Denver, post requests up in the shopping requests channel, and I will do my best to fulfill them. And I am going to, of course, be bringing back all kinds of cool stuff, requested or not. And also we're going to have a little treat for you on the sale tomorrow night, which is going to be mostly 50% off. But I found some stuff that fell down. Sam cleaned my streaming area. Like, there's a floor. There hasn't been a floor over here in a while. But I found some things that apparently had a gravitational incident during an unboxing and never got picked up. So they're actually brand new merchandise that has not been on the sales floor. So we will be doing a 25% discount on those cool new surprise things. They will not be 50% off. But they're rural priority. Just saying. And then, of course, our entire sale tomorrow night is going to be 50% off with the exception of those few items. And we're probably going to be doing, what do you guys want to see tomorrow night? Tiny shinies, medium shinies, crystals, bargain basement stuff, Indian glass, like for 25 cents a strand. Like, what do you want to see tomorrow? Does anybody have any opinions on that? Okay, so I'm just stringing. Okay, bargain basement is fun. So we got one vote for bargain basement. Yay, Corvus is back. That's okay. I'm stringing, so you're not really missing any technique. At the moment, you saw the start, and now I'm just stringing all my beads onto my cord so that I can knot. Also, yay, invoices! Because invoices make money that you can use to buy beads. So, Corvus, what do you want to see on the sale tomorrow night? Tiny shinies, medium shinies, bargain basement. What you want? So why am I doing it like this? Why am I stringing it first instead of stringing a bead and making a knot, stringing a bead and making a knot, stringing a bead and making a knot? Well, it's because doing it this way means you're not picking up and putting down your tweezers. So you're doing all of one step first and then you're grabbing your tool. and doing all of the next step. And it really does lead to a savings in the amount of time it takes you to do this. Okay, so I'm almost done. I'm just getting down to the end of the strand. I've got about 3 inches left. And then we'll proceed to the actual knotting technique. Corvus, how's your weather? Are you still okay? Is Silver still okay? Y'all still all right? From all the like crazy earthquakiness and storminess and stuff? So close to being done. Ooh, the 95 to 98 life. You know, we've been living that life too. It's actually been
More lifelike?
more lifelike. I mean, it's still hot AF in the afternoon, but at least it doesn't feel like you're walking in a hairdryer, so that's something. And the mornings have actually been solidly decent as far as temperature goes. Okay, so everything is strung on here. Okay, so now I'm going to just tie myself a slip knot on my cord close to the needle, and that's just so that my beads don't fall off when I'm trying to knot them. So a slip knot is just the knot where you go around and pull through. So you have a little loop, so you can easily make that knot disappear by just pulling on the ends. So there we go, there's our slip knot. So now we're going to go all the way down to the other end. And this is where having a somewhat tidy work surface is going to help you, because otherwise your beads are going to get tangled and everything on your work surface. Okay, so I'm going to slide down one bead till it all right. Slide down one bead until it is sitting next to your last knot. Oh, that's the problem. Okay, so beware, because when you're dealing with two cords, sometimes they'll actually go in between each other, and that's not fun. Okay, so now we're going to make the knot right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the beads in my dominant hand. I'm right-handed, so this is my right hand. I'm going to wrap them around my left hand, and then I'm going to just reach through and grab them and pull them through that little triangular shape that I made with my first 3 fingers. Then I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to follow through that triangular shape and grab, and then let go and just pull and push down and pull to tighten. So there's my knot. So we're going to pull down another bead. So again, beads in my right hand, wrap around, pull through. And what I kind of like to do at this point is I'll grab them between my index finger, my ring finger and my pinky, so that I don't have to kind of chase that around, and then just take your tweezers and just go through the loops. So what I'm doing is I'm going from the back of my hand side through the loop to the front of my hand side where my beads are, and then just pull the loop to make a knot and push down to tighten. So if we're going to start to do that a little bit faster, what that looks like is beads in my right hand, around, pull through, and make the knot. And pull down a bead, and again, around, pull through, and back to front. Make the knot. The further I get away from this, the less it's going to start getting caught in my knots. And push. So we're going to pull it down, around, through, and knot. So now if we want to go at what I would consider regular speed, that's going to be more like this. Yes, you want to make sure that you're putting your tweezers right up against the hole in the bead, like so, because if you put it up here, that's where your knot's going to go. Knotting more tightly is better than knotting more loosely. You'll notice that my beads are a little kind of cattywampus at the moment. That's not terrible, because that means that what I can do is I can do a final tightening of my knots at the end of my piece, and I don't have to worry about the knots stretching. So let's talk a bit about stretching while I'm doing this. So if you're using silk cord, you need to pre-stretch it before you use it, because the cord has a little bit of elasticity, and you want to make sure that that gets out before you knot on it, because if you don't, the this is where I had my head in this a minute ago. If you don't, the weight of the beads will stretch your cord, and you're eventually going to wind up with poorly positioned knots, even if you did a perfect job of knotting. So the heat treated nylon is treated so it doesn't stretch. So that means the cord's not going to stretch, but if you've got any slack in your knots, like if your knots are extra loose, the weight of the cord, the weight of the beads is eventually going to pull that cord and tighten those knots, and you're going to wind up with space between your beads and your knots, and that is not what you want. No pun intended. I'm just going to keep sliding and knotting. Sure, you bet. I can do that. Tomorrow, though. Not today, because tonight, after stream, I have beaucoup of stuff to do. Is all good. Well, okay, I will say that you're gonna be slower than me at first, probably. There's a high likelihood. But if you break it down, essentially all I'm doing is I am taking my bead down and I'm making a knot in my cord. See? Knot in my cord. And then I'm just taking my tweezers and sticking them through that knot, so that gives me a lever to pull against. I know it's not a lever, just don't fulcrum, whatever. Science brain not on board right now, but it gives me something to pull against to then position my knot. So the actual, fancy handwork is only just to make the knot, and then just, again, so there's the knot is here, you can see it. Make sure your two cords are together, but yeah, now tweezers go through the knot and grab. Now, sometimes you'll get this, see how one of my cords is tight and one of mine is not. So before I release my tweezers, I'm just gonna pull on each cord to see which one's the loose one, and it was that one. So we're gonna tighten that up, and then also I will say that, like, using your thumbnail to shove that down, and I'm holding tension with my fingers, that's another big technical thing with getting your knots close, is when you tighten, you want to tighten always by pushing the knot towards the bead, like so, not by pulling the bead away from the knot. Okay, so knot towards the bead, not bead away from the knot. And yes, I am aware of how many times I've said the word knot in its various permutations in the past 60 seconds. Oh, I do have one possibly one for you guys. Maybe Ask Me Anything could apply to them too.
Yes.
But I get that everyone tries their best when it comes to grammar and spelling, and I'm not here to be judgmental of anybody, but sometimes there are people who should know better. So do you have a pet peeve as far as misuse of words? My main one is, it's industry specific.
That was ironic.
It is industry specific, good God. Yeah, right. And it mainly irritates me when trained jewelers, especially sometimes people who are maybe a little bit on the snobby side, misuse this word. So what you hang a pendant from is called a bail. And the correct spelling of bail in that context is B-A-I-L, similar to if you were to bail out of a plane or bail water out of a boat. It is not spelled B-A-L-E like baling hay. And once again, if you've only ever heard it spoken and you weren't trained in jewelry, then I'm not here to judge you. But if you were trained in jewelry, chances are in your training you read at least a dozen books that used the word bail spelled correctly, and yet you managed not to retain any of that knowledge, and are then being mad at people on the internet for other things like asking simple questions. Ironically, yes, that is for sure a one. Because it's ironically versus coincidentally, isn't it? Like, what's the proper usage of that, Heather? You're not there, are you? There is no Heather on the other side of my screen. Like, I'm not here to be the grammar police or the spelling police, but sometimes when people are like, Neener, I know more than you, and then they just, like, you know, have a gaffe like that, you're just like, yeah, but do you really? Okay, so I am about halfway done with my necklace, so I should finish slightly before 7:30, which means we'll have about a 10-minute break before the button list. Right? Yes, that's a good one. Okay, I've been knotting for over 20 years. So, and I've been knotting professionally for over 20 years. So, fast happens. But yes, I could care less. That's a good one. Let's see. What are some other like phraseologies? Okay, I don't think he's on. I love my boyfriend to death, but he says nuclear and drives me bonkers. I know, right? We do. It's true. Okay, so what's yours? Is it ironically or is it something else? You know, and once again, if somebody's just inexperienced or whatever, like, I'm not, it's just, it pisses me off when people who are jerks then, make gaffes like that. Oh yeah, there's a dear girl that I work with, and, I think is her favorite word. I will say that is partly a training thing, being trained to speak. Like I wasn't trained in public speaking, but I was in theater, and so I was trained in, even though I can't act for a shite, I had to take acting classes, and I had to sometimes say lines and dance performances and things. So that's something that was trained out of me pretty early. But I think rehearsed speaking does that. Because I honestly think a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it. But yes, I'm right there with you, Corvus. Every time Ariel, not Heather's Ariel, different Ariel, does it, I'm like, oh, nails on a chalkboard. Which is really funny because nails on a chalkboard doesn't actually bother me. All right, it's getting closer. Got that much. Right? Seriously. Agreed. I am with the Corvus on this one. All right, anybody else out there? Pet peeves in speech or writing? Corvus and I can't be the only two bitchy ones here. Kenneth did chime in. There is also the problematic use of the word literally. Because sometimes it means literally and sometimes it means figuratively, colloquially. So that's always fun. Thank you, Nightbot. Yes, when it comes to podcast time, you never know what's going to happen on the Beading Dream stream. Especially since it's an Ask Us Anything stream. Because Corvus already asked if it had to be bead related. So I will say the reason that a lot of times we teach people with pearls is because their holes are very consistently sized. And the holes in these beads are very consistently sized, which is good. God, there's a literally joke in there somewhere. I just can't find it right now. But I once again, the reason we teach people with pearls is because their holes are typically very consistent. And knotting with holes that are not consistent, whether that be a strand of beads that are all the same bead but are not drilled well, or that means you are trying to combine beads with different size holes, that is where this really gets difficult. So I have said it before, I should say it again. For your first few projects, try and use beads that are all the same, that have good holes, that are consistently sized throughout the bead, so none of those stupid beads that are bigger on the outsides than they are in the middle, or the hole's bigger on one side than it is on the other. Just stick with things that are nice and easy. I believe we're sending you a pair of pointy tweezers, Corvus, but yes, you want very pointy tweezers, and you can get tweezers like this for a variety of price points, anywhere from, you know, $2.50 up to, you know, $30 or $40. I will say I've used Heather and Carol's $40 tweezers, and they are amazeballs, but if you don't knot all the time, you're probably fine with, you know, the $5 ones, which are the ones I'm using now. Skinny eyebrow tweezers work in a pinch, but they're not the best. But I'm not gonna lie, I have done it. Okay, so I'm coming down to the end. So what I have here are the last beads on my necklace. So I want to knot all of them except these last 3. Because what I'm going to do is when I put my bullion on, I'm going to come back down and I'm going to make the knot there and make the knot there. So that means I've got 1, 2, 3 knots to go before I finish. Also, I will say that in addition to just like, you know, general cost effectiveness, there's nothing to help your knotting speed like that oh crap moment where you're like, oh, this is due in 30 minutes. The customer's coming to pick it up and I haven't even started it. So panic. Panic will get your speed up. And look, I didn't even swear. Yeah, exactly. I still have nightmares to this day about being in college and it being like the first day of the semester and not knowing my schedule and, you know, what classes I was taking. Like, why do I still have that nightmare? I graduated from college 22 years ago, and yet, still, every once in a while. Well, Corvus, that's because you're amazeballs. Okay, so I'm going to, because I had that one piece of bullion that was not viable, so I'm going to just go ahead and cut myself another one. So I've got these last 3 pearls, not pearls, last 3 Roman glass that I have not placed a knot in between. I'm going to go to my slip knot and I'm going to carefully take it out. The reason I say carefully is because if you just yank on this, sometimes you get weird twists and you wind up with an actual knot. That is no bueno at this point. All right, so I'm going to take this And we're going to thread it onto our needle. Or we're going to drop our needle. Come on, go through. There we go. Okay, so we're going to thread it onto our needle like so, and we're just going to pull it down over our cord like so. Oh gosh, why? Okay, I want to set that right next to that bead. Grab the other half of my clasp and thread that on. And sometimes you'll get this phenomenon where the holes in the beads are actually big enough to go over the bullion. So you just want to keep that bullion out of the bead, and once you put your needle down through, it'll be okay. Well, apparently Corvus, because Kenneth and I are, so we're going to go down through this bead towards the rest of the necklace. Because Kenneth and I are both, I believe, at somewhat different removes from college, so we are definitely scientific proof that it never goes away. Alright, so I've got that evened up, so I'm just going to pull that down to make a nice little loop on my bullion and yank it like so. And then I'm going to make a knot between these two beads. So I'm just going to do that by going around and crossing in between the two beads I want to knot and then pulling that through. Oh yeah, ain't it grand? And from what I've seen and heard, grad school traumatizes even worse. So glad I didn't go down that road. Now this, in my opinion, is the hardest part of any bullion finish. Is now what I need to do is I need to take my thread down through this bead right here. So I'm going to have to get real up close, which means you're going to get to look at the top of my head. Yeehaw. Okay, so there it is. Through there, and then pull it. So, and then, I mean, you go, you do you. Okay, so that's it. That is my finish. So now I can cut this off fairly short. You don't cut it super short at this point just because. So put your bullion away so you don't kill it. So do you want to teach Corvus? Is that why you want a doctorate? Totally missed the trash can, but anyway. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stretch this out a bit. So I'm just gonna take it and I'm just gonna run it through my hands, and that's gonna make it not lay so wonky. What that is doing is it's just tightening my knots so that it's gonna lay nicely. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hypo cement glue. We've used this before on other things like stretchy bracelets, and wow, I just yanked the thing out of it, but that's okay. And I'm just gonna put the glue onto the second knot of each side where the end of the cord is. You don't really need to worry about getting this on your beads because it will just kind of peel right off if you need it to. And then I'm gonna take my snips and I'm going to snip as close to that knot as I can without actually cutting the knot. So 1 and 2, and that's it. It's done. So that was professional. Yes, always glue before cutting, because if your piece is stressed before you glue, there is actually a chance that the knots could come out if you've cut them as close as you should. So always glue before cutting, and ideally let the glue dry for about 10-15 minutes before you cut it, and definitely before you try and wear it. So that's it. That is professional knotting with Bullion. Also, this is a lovely length. So there we go. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Beading Dreams live tutorial stream this Wednesday evening. Heather and I will be back in just a few minutes. I'm going to grab a couple bites of food, refill my drink, and we will be back with, thank you, Corvus, the Buttonless podcast, which tonight is going to be an Ask Us Anything stream, so get your questions ready. And we will see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream, in just a few minutes. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon.